For decades, the figure of Jason Voorhees was treated as pure fiction. But what if I told you that behind the mask, there's a real story, buried beneath secret documents, dark pacts, and enforced silence? This isn't just an urban legend. It's a living nightmare, born of forbidden rituals and hidden experiments. What you're about to hear was never meant to be revealed. In July of 1979, 3 teenagers vanished at a remote camp near Wessex Lake, Oregon. The tent was found torn, blood-stained, and with the word Jason written on a broken mirror with a fingertip. No bodies, no witnesses. The case was quickly silenced. The town's people seemed to know something, but their silence was absolute. Sheriff Douglas Crane tried to keep the investigation going, but was removed days later for misconduct. Oddly, all records vanished from public archives. Local newspapers were ordered to avoid the topic. Residents who insisted on speaking were intimidated. Something bigger was behind the disappearance. A week later, a man arrived in town, Alan Perlow, a screenwriter from Paramount. He claimed to be doing field research for a new movie. He was seen questioning locals, buying old documents and paying for silence. The name Jason intrigued him too much, but no one understood why a writer was so invested in a real-life case. An old fisherman, Jonas Carter, was one of the few who spoke to Perlow. He claimed to have seen a figure emerge from the lake the night the teens vanished. It was a boy, but his face deformed, covered in scars, dead eyes. Days later, Carter was found dead on his porch. Officially, a heart attack. Unofficially, signs of struggle and scratches. Medical reports said heart failure, but neighbors heard screams and metal sounds. That same month, Hollywood announced the film Friday the 13th. When the script leaked, it was nearly identical to Wessex case. A deformed boy, a lake, campgrounds. But now it was fiction. Jason Voorhees became a movie legend. In 1981, Martin Doyle, a former cop turned private investigator, received an anonymous cassette. The nighttime recording showed a tall figure in a crude mask, standing by a tree, watching teens in a cabin. The location, Oregon's woods, same area as Wessex Lake. The image shook. The only sound was heavy breathing. Martin became obsessed. He drove to Wessex. The town felt frozen in time. Old shops, empty streets, wary stares. When he asked about the lake, people changed subjects. When he said Jason, some cried, others vanished. It was like the name was cursed, something no one dared say out loud. He met Abigail, a woman who'd lived in Wessex for decades. She invited him for tea and secretly gave him a diary. It belonged to Pamela Voorhees, Jason's mother. It described abuse at a psychiatric facility and her raising of a deformed child. A dark secret, seemingly erased by history. The diary said Jason was born in 1962 under horrible conditions. Pamela raised him in a forest cabin near the lake. At age 7, teens broke in to use drugs. They mocked his appearance and cruelly doused him in gasoline and lit a match. Pamela arrived as they fled, but Jason was already burned. Jason survived but was left unrecognizable. Pamela, devastated and driven mad, believed the teens weren't dead, just disguising themselves to return and kill him. She began abducting and murdering campers, convinced they were the same ones. Pamela was eventually caught. Deemed insane, she was institutionalized. A month later, she vanished. Medical records mentioned an escape, but no explanation. One final message was left behind. On her cell mirror, she wrote, "He's ready now." But no one knew who she meant. Jason's name was forgotten again. Martin's investigation led him to Pendleton, where Pamela was confined. In the archives, he found an incomplete file and a blurred photo of a child in a crude mask. Beside it, "In case of emergency, activate Jason." The patient's name was unclear, only a reference, the boy from the lake. He tracked down Robert Lang, an ex-psychiatric nurse. Lang hesitated but confessed. Pamela believed Jason had returned in monstrous form for revenge. She said he wasn't dead. He was waiting. After her escape, Lang was called for a secret mission: find Jason and erase him permanently. Martin doubted Lang's sanity, but pieces were aligning. He found a report from Frank Adler, an ex-government agent, about a secret op to silence Jason. It referenced a lake zone where bodies were never recovered. His search took him to a forgotten forest area where the lake had devoured everything. There he found an old cabin, half submerged and mossy. Inside, ashes, a leather mask, and a faded photo of a child. On its back, "He will return, and when he does, the blood will be mine." A chill ran down Martin's spine. Something evil was stirring. Martin left the cabin with the photo in hand. That night, as he reviewed the files in his motel room, the power went out. Seconds later, a knock on the door. He didn't answer. Another knock, louder. He looked through the peephole. No one. When he opened the door, a crude, wet mask lay at his feet. He rushed to his car, drove hours to the nearest city, and handed the evidence to journalist Lisa Harrow, known for exposing military cover-ups. At first, she thought it was all a prank, until she played the cassette. The breathing, the movement, the eyes. It was too real. Lisa flew to New Jersey to consult with an expert in folklore and government secrecy, Dr. Alan Krebs. He analyzed the tape, diary, and reports. His conclusion? A failed Cold War experiment. Jason wasn't just a boy, he said. He was part of a black project to create fear-based weapons, monsters that couldn't die. He showed Lisa a document labeled Project Revenant. It listed test subjects exposed to trauma, forced mutations, and psychological warfare. One subject had survived multiple termination attempts. The name was redacted, but the location? Wessex Lake. The project was supposedly shut down in 1973, but Krebs believed Jason had been activated by accident, his trauma making him indestructible. He doesn't feel pain, doesn't sleep, doesn't die. He remembers fire, betrayal, and now he hunts anyone who disturbs that place. Lisa returned to Oregon with a cameraman. They camped near the old lake. On the second night, the camera caught movement in the trees, a figure, large, masked, watching. No sounds, just presence. They fled, but the footage survived. She released a 10-minute documentary online. It was taken down within an hour. Her account suspended. Martin vanished the next day. No calls, no signs. Lisa left the country, fearing for her life. But whispers grew online. People started reporting similar sightings near lakes, mostly in the Pacific Northwest. The pattern: disappearances, silence. Authorities claiming drownings or bear attacks. But no bodies, no prints, just torn tents, scratches on trees, and sometimes that same crude mask. In 2015, a deep web user posted a video titled "The Revenant Protocol." It showed a military debriefing, men in suits reviewing photos of campgrounds. One stated, "Subject 13 remains active. Termination attempts unsuccessful. Containment advised." Another replied, "Let the legend do its job. Fear keeps them away." The video disappeared hours later, but the legend grew. Jason Voorhees, once a fictional killer, might be a real experiment gone rogue. An unstoppable entity born of pain, fire, and silence. Not a ghost, not a man. Something else. Watching, waiting. And if you ever find yourself near a quiet lake, deep in the woods, and you feel like you're being watched, don't run, don't scream, just walk away, slowly. Because if the legend is true, he doesn't chase, he waits. In 2018, a team of young documentarians decided to investigate the origins of the Revenant Project. They called themselves Deep Signal and had more courage than common sense. Equipped with cameras, drones, and a history of viral videos about abandoned places, they headed straight to what they called the heart of the legend, the forgotten outskirts of Wessex Lake. During the first 2 days, they found only silence, dense trees, and ruins of old facilities. But on the third night, something changed. The drone captured an image for just a few seconds. A tall figure, motionless at the edge of the woods, staring at the campsite. When they returned to review the footage, the file was gone. They persisted, stubborn. One of the members, Kayla, found a rusty hatch buried under leaves and roots. They filmed everything, opened it. Inside was a concrete corridor covered in symbols scratched with nails or knives. At the end, a steel door, locked. But there were sounds, low, guttural, like something had been breathing there for decades. That night, one of them disappeared. Tyler. He had gone to relieve himself and didn't return. They searched for hours, called out, nothing, until they found his lantern, still on, floating in the middle of the lake. It was impossible. He would have had to swim dozens of meters in seconds, and he couldn't swim. They fled. Only Kayla and Jonah managed to leave the forest. They went to the police, showed the footage, recorders, but the files were corrupted. The sounds were gone. And the police, they just smiled. You must have seen a bear, or hallucinated. It happens a lot out there. Kayla never spoke publicly about it again. Jonah also disappeared months later. But before, he sent an encrypted USB drive to a private forum for paranormal researchers. The content was incomplete, but revealing. Inside, there were parts of a diary, seemingly from a scientist named Dr. Myers. He detailed experiments at Wessex Lake. They said it was for national security, to create fear, control. But what we did there was inhumane. The child died and then came back. Not like before. Now he listens to the lake. Another section, scribbled and shaky, read, "The mask, it's his. The connection isn't broken, it's just waiting."